Hi all, thanks for joining me. Today's topic will be on commercial industrial property. Should I be buying one? What should I be looking out for? What are the factors to consider? And actually, if there is any better alternatives altogether, which I'll share towards the end of the video. Alright, so the context over here is that ABSD is really a concern. Foreigners is 60%, Singaporeans is 20%, the second one. And I think most of us, we've accumulated a substantial amount of savings, don't know what to do with your funds. There are many advertisements of overseas property making you confused on what kind of investment opportunities are there out there. So I thought I would just touch on this topic and give you a clearer picture on how you can structure it all together as part of your real estate portfolio, that you can even look at it from a financial planning point of view. When you retire, how much you can aim for and the passive income that you can draw out from it. It will be mainly talking about investment because some of you are maybe operating a business, thinking of setting up a business and purchasing a place. It's a totally different consideration altogether. So when you're looking at buying a commercial industrial, maybe I just touch on for own use per se. A lot of people right now that are operating in these industrial spaces, they're actually operating out of own use. Okay, a simple way of looking at it, if let's say if this property is just $1 million, okay, this industrial property is $1 million, the rental down there, maybe the yield is around 5% on average. So the rental down there per year you're paying is around 50K. Okay, but if the remaining lease on the property, let's say is around 30 years, very common nowadays for any new industrial properties that comes out on the market, paying a rental of 50K, it also means that in 20 years, you kind of fully pay up a $1 million industrial property altogether. So it might make sense if the remaining lease is long enough, because if let's say if this is 30 years, you got like another 10 years of free usage. So that's a very simple way of looking at it. Of course, you have to consider the prospect of your own business, how confident you are in this business in looking at it from a longer term perspective. Or even you have certain confidence because of the attributes of this property, it can be still reasonably rented out at 5% or 6% yield, and that will still cover whatever costs. Okay, so that's from the own use perspective, 5% or 6% yield, and that will still cover whatever costs. Okay, so that's from the own use perspective, 5% or 6% yield, and that will still cover whatever. Looking at the investment perspective, that would be very objective, very binary in making the decision whether it's a yes, no. Okay, so what are some of the attributes? Let me just share with you over here. Looking at the investment perspective, that would be very objective, very binary in making the decision whether it's a yes, no of investing in one. Okay, people like it because of its yield. Okay. There's, I think, a lot of causes online, especially when the interest rate environment was lower. You're looking at 6%. If you can get those that are selling cheaper, or maybe on very, very little lesser lease, it can be up to 7%. All right, so the yield is generally higher, especially for industrial properties that are on a leasehold basis. Okay, of course, when you're looking at the freehold ones, it's not so much of the yield. Yes, yield is something, and yield is one component, but some of them are looking more from the capital appreciation point of view. Okay, the other point, of course, that I mentioned is no ABSD in the commercial space. All right, it's not considered a residential property count. So even if you own 10 of it, it doesn't affect your residential property count and doesn't affect your ABSD. Okay, liquidity is something that you want to look at. Is the ease of selling. Liquidity, to me, in real estate investment per se, it's one of the main consideration when I look at a property, whether I should buy, whether even I should buy it or not. Okay, so it's what people talk about as the exit strategy. Okay, so you kind of need to understand how easy it is to sell this particular property. Usually when we look at because it's a very big spectrum, industrial property can be as cheap as something that's 500,000 in the B1, B2 space, or even less than that when you're looking at something very far with 20 years or less in lease, and then all the way up to a 30 million shop house in Boat Quay, right? The full commercial Boat Quay. So of course, something that's on the lower price quantum will be easier to sell in the liquidity sense. Okay, funding per se, it will be solely cash. You cannot use CPF. Okay, that's a very clear distinction between a residential property and a non-residential property. So if you are looking to invest in one, it can be quite cash heavy in terms of its funding. That is the reason why a lot of people also go into co-investing. I think there's a lot of causes when they actually set up certain groups and then co-invest, or you can even co-invest with your family and friends. But to me, that is one big issue, because I've been in this line for more than 10, 11 years already. I've seen people fall out. I've seen family members, friends fall out because of certain property, when money comes, it's a very sour topic that can sour relationship. All right, so I'll try to steer clear from that. All right, the interest rate is also higher, so that's one consideration. You know, residential property, a fixed rate right now, you can even get as low as 2.8, 2.85. But for non-residential commercial one, at time of speaking, it is around 3.6 for a fixed rate, as good as 3.6. But if you're buying not for your own use, that means not using an operating company to buy it, that means purely investment, you sell an investment holding company, it can be higher by a 2% difference. Okay, it can be around 3.8 to 4%. And loan to value will always be higher. You can get even up to 90% loan to value if you're buying for your own use, but for investment holding, when you're going to buy and rent it out, it's probably around 80% or so. Yeah. Okay, so in every sense, it is more expensive, especially in a higher interest rate environment. Okay, risk and diversification, because of the wide spectrum that I talk about, from industrial all the way to shop house, and we're talking about industrial, you've got B1, B2 with different users, and then even on the commercial space, you've got shops, you've got restaurants, you've got office, you've got different grades of office, right? And then you've got free office, 99 years office, and then you even have medical suites, strata medical suites that you can buy, or even food factories that you can buy per se. So it's really a wide spectrum. But let's say if you've got limited fund, obviously we're not talking about someone who has 10 million AUM to invest in commercial, industrial. We're talking with someone who has maybe saved up some money to buy. Then you only can choose one. And if you choose one, you're putting all in a basket. So that's something to think of, because it will be a little bit more risky. As compared to residential, I mean, residential is residential. Yes, I mean, condo, HDB, there are different segments, but you're still in the residential space per se. All right. Hope that explains. And the last one, importantly, when you're looking at real estate investment, because for me, when I look at it, I also compare with different asset classes. And to me, real estate, one of the very important points is that it is a hard asset that you can feel, touch, see, live in, use it. The utility of this financial asset. Okay, this is something that is important for real estate. That's why residential properties are doing very well, because there's a real need of it for people to go back home to sleep, right? To stay with their family. Okay, so when I look at that, you compare residential and non-residential. Okay, non-residential in terms of its usage, the utility, maybe it's more specific. It's not as flexible in that sense for the use, especially after COVID. If I can use COVID as an example, right? COVID affected the way we work, like working from home, Zooming, like what I'm doing right now has become a norm, but we still need to go back home to sleep. I think COVID actually really emphasized the residential demand over the commercial side of things, right? When you talk about this utility of the asset. Okay, so just based on this point, that's why I feel when you're going to structure your entire real estate portfolio, the focus is still on maximizing the real estate part of it, the residential part of it, before talking about commercial. So there's two good areas after going through some of these attributes. There's two good areas. I mean, if you have a certain amount of funds that you want to deploy, you really wanting some hard assets that's non-residential. B1 industrial is something that you can look at, because I think they're low quantum, low risk per se, giving the highest rental yield. It kind of solves the liquidity issue altogether, and there is always a real need. Try to focus on probably those that were launched in the late 1990s that had 60 years lease. Examples are based on my work on the ground. I had two listings, like one in Frontier in the Ubi area. So these kind of areas, there won't be new industrial already, because there's no land space. And even if there's new industrial, like I mentioned, there's only going to be maximum of 30 years lease. So all these with 60 years, even at the late 1990s, they probably still have 35 all the way up to 30 years lease remaining. So as compared to any new industrial coming up, you still have an edge. You still got more remaining as compared to the new ones. So these are good spaces to look at. I mean, I just saw a few at the Uyghur Tower area. That's at the Bukit Batok area. It's a grey area for B1 usage. Some of them are using 100% as offices, and you can get 100% offices for a B1 cost. then it is really maximizing the usage of it altogether. So B1 is a good space, but just take note on the interest rate, because at the high interest rate environment, your real net return might be lower. Okay, the other good space is right at the other end of the spectrum, is the commercial shophouses. I think commercial shophouses, if you really understand and compare with residential side of things, is equivalent to a GCB in the non-residential side of things, right? It is finite, located in very good location, the prime location. It is considered landed. We talk about the landed shophouses, not just the ones that subdivided into the strata level. We're talking about the whole thing. So it feels like a GCB altogether in a non-residential space. Okay, take note that this must be full commercial title based on the zoning. A lot of people are not aware of it, because the zoning determines whether who is a buyer. Why full commercial is the best? Because they are open to foreigners, and if you know foreigners, they cannot buy properties under the Residential Property Act, which are the restricted properties, including all the landed properties, the residential landed properties. But somehow full commercial shop house that comes with the land is the exception. So it's a bit of a gray area that foreigners are, of course, high net worth foreigners are taking advantage of it, especially family offices that have been buying after the COVID period. That's the reason why commercial shop houses have skyrocketing in prices. Okay, partly because of the ABSD that are affecting the residential property too. But this is a space whereby you need a huge amount of budget, probably at least 8 mil if you're looking in the Serangoon area that's fully commercial, all the way up to 30 mil in the best of the best area, talking about District 1, District 2, some with even freehold 999 titles. So this one, I think in terms of legacy planning, in terms of scarcity, and just being confident about Asia, Southeast Asia and Singapore doing well, continue to attract rich people to come over, I think it is a good long-term play. Okay, so these are two good areas.